It's your girl Dia Direct, and welcome back to the Superpower Podcast. It is 2021, y'all. We are starting a brand new season, and this season is all about the power of pivoting. Because we've had to do just that in so many ways. Today I want to talk to you about going through changes. Have you been going through changes? Are you one of those people who life has changed so much, so fast, so furious, that you're having a hard time keeping up with it, that you're feeling overwhelmed by just how much you've been taken out of your comfort zone? Whether it's because of the grief that you feel because you've lost a loved one, or you've lost a job, you've lost your sense of well-being, you've lost your sense of normalcy, or maybe you're in the process of a life change around age or health or relationship, and making you reevaluate who you are, your worth even, making you reevaluate what matters most in your life right now. Here's what I know for sure. The one constant that we can all depend on is change. Easy? No. Easier said than done? Yes. But is it necessary? Absolutely. And I want to talk to you about some changes I've been going through. I want to talk to you about how we can really pivot in 2021 and really look at changes as an opportunity versus something that just happened to us, so that we don't spend our lives being a victim, right? So that we're not so overwhelmed by change that it keeps us stuck, feeling out of control, feeling overwhelmed, feeling we just are lost and don't know what to do. Well, the good news is that's part of the process when things change. Sometimes we have to go through those processes. Sometimes we literally have to have our lives disrupted in order to prepare us for what's next. Does it feel good? No. Would you rather it not happen? Absolutely. But is there a way for whatever you're dealing with right now, whatever you're going through, whatever feels like there's no way out, there's no way back up, there's no way back to yourself? I'm here to let you know that there is hope, and there is a way out, and there's a way up, and there's a way to better. To a better you, to a better perspective, to a better approach, to a better way to use your time, your energy, and your mindset. And it all really begins in your thought process. And I want to talk to you about some things that I've been going through, 4 particular practices that I've been using to really support me in this process. Do I have it all figured out? Absolutely not. But I believe in sharing good information as you get it. Because, being a master or an expert at something is all relative. And I want to share with you some things I've been going through in real time, in that it will encourage you, give you some tools to help you move forward. Okay? So I'm in my 40s, and I finally reached that point where I'm perimenopausal. Child, listen, the night sweats, the foggy brain, irritability, the highs and the lows emotionally, it has been difficult. Your energy, all that stuff I've been dealing with. And not only have I been dealing with the physical aspects of perimenopause, because I'm not quite in menopause yet, which you're actually in menopause when your cycle completely stops for a year. So that's not been my journey as of yet. But even before just sort of going through the physical aspects of what perimenopause has brought to my life, I think I've been going through, and I've had time to really process, I've been going through the change of life in terms of recognizing that I'm at a different station in my life. I'm not the young chick who could just be the life of the party in the same way anymore. I got to think through things differently. The cost and the stakes are higher, right? In everything that I do, I have to be a little bit more deliberate in my approach in life. And then, of course, I got married for the 3rd time. Hello. We talk about that later, and we will talk about it, because there's a whole conversation that I want to have with you, particularly for my women who have never been married or who want to remarry. It's different when you get older. You're already formed in who you are. And so learning to share your life again with somebody else who's also fully formed in many ways, it brings its own challenges and changes. And so we will talk about the changes that we go through and how to pivot in relationships, in business, in your health, in your mindset. And your mindset is really the first place that I want to begin this season and this series, because there's a scripture that says, as a man thinketh, so is he. And of course, you can apply she to that. Literally, just think about that for a second. This is not some new age thing. This has been a principle and a concept that has been around for many, many centuries, in terms of your mind being where everything really begins, and in many cases it's also where it ends. And so how you think about things, how you see them, right? We hear a lot of people talking about learning how to be grateful, and it's how you think about your circumstances and your situation that really is the first clue, answer, and opportunity for change. Because two people can be in the same situation. Two people could have lost their job during COVID, had the same amount of money in the bank, had the same set of circumstances, and have two completely different mindsets about what to do and how to feel. And based upon which direction you go in will ultimately determine how the rest of this season goes for you. Because sometimes we prolong the season longer than it has to be just because of how we think about it. And I'll give you an example of many years ago. You know, I graduated from Howard. I was a theater major, thought I would immediately go into entertainment, but I needed a job. And I actually also got married right after college. My ex-husband at the time really encouraged me to get a regular job, if you will. I didn't want to, but I was also trying to be smart and practical and do all those things. And so I got a job in the Senate, and I hated it. I hated sitting at a desk all day. I didn't like pushing papers, and it was boring to me. There was nothing about that job that spoke to what I went to college for. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? This is not what I want. And so I would pray and pray and pray and ask God to deliver me from this job. Like, why am I here? And I remember hearing very, very clearly the Lord say to me, before you ask me to take you out of this job, ask what are the lessons that you're supposed to learn while you're here. And then you can graduate, but you have to get your lessons first. Well, that was hard to hear. I didn't want to hear it. I certainly didn't enjoy how it made me feel, but I did take it to heart. And so I began to change my mind about my prayers and about my perspective. And I began to pray differently and ask God to show me what it is I'm supposed to learn in this season. What am I supposed to do? Help me to get everything out of this situation that I'm supposed to, so that in fact I can graduate, move forward, and go to the next part of my life. Now, if we think about graduation, we all like the idea of graduation. Graduation symbolizes the stuff we see on social media and Instagram. It represents seeing somebody drive the nice car, seeing somebody in their new house. It represents seeing someone travel the world and accomplish all these things and have a fat bank account. But that's the graduation. The process was a whole different conversation that people don't always talk about. The process was saving your money. The process was not being able to go out all the time with your friends. The process was sacrificing some things that you might want immediately in order to get the things that you want down the road. The process was studying instead of going to hang out or sleeping. The process was all the steps, all the baby steps, all the things that you have to do that are not glorified, that don't always feel good. The process is not knowing what to do, and sometimes being discouraged or even depressed or frustrated or just clueless, right? All of that is the process that we have to go through in order to eventually get to graduation. Like when you think about when you've passed a test in life, when you think about when you graduated from high school or college, you had to take a final. You had to go through a process. You had to study, right? You had to study to show yourself approved, as the Bible says. You had to do something that wasn't glamorous or fun, but that was necessary to get you to that next level. And so I would suggest that this season of change that we're in is not here to hurt us. It's here to help us. It's here to guide us. It's here to redirect us. It's here to give us insight into what's next. And when I was really going through some changes after being laid off from a past job, And I was really discouraged. I remember feeling low and feeling like, God, do you like me? Like, are we friends? Did I do something to offend you? What have I done so bad that nobody's calling? I was a senior producer for the Tom Joyner Morning Show. I've been producing for well over 15 years. I have good communication skills. I have great relationships, so I thought, but none of those relationships were calling me for a job. So I was feeling really just down and forgotten. Have you ever felt forgotten during a season of change? You just feel like, when you're up and things are going well for you, people are there, inviting you to all the parties, all the things, especially if you can do something for them. But then there's those times where you go through a shift, let's say like a layoff, all of a sudden the phone calls stop. All of a sudden the people who you thought you were really cool with and close with, who had your back, aren't around, aren't calling, have no answers for you. That can be really, really hard and discouraging. And that's how I felt. And I remember hearing, because again, part of this journey to shift and change is sometimes you've got to quiet the noise. You've got to quiet the distractions that clutter your thoughts. Sometimes you think you're being forgotten, and really God is trying to quiet your life so that you can reprioritize some things, so that you can see things with a different eye. And that's what happened. And I think that's also what COVID did for a lot of us. It really helped us to realize that things that you thought you had to have, people who you thought you had to be around, places that you thought you had to go, you don't. And things that used to matter, don't. You keep the main thing the main thing. So during this time, I remember being in my quiet place, literally sitting on the floor, crying, just undone. Like undone. And I was asking, like, God, like, what's up? And he said to me, Dia, I did not bring you through this to destroy you. Because that's how I was feeling. Like, you don't like me very much. He said, I didn't bring you through this to destroy you. I'm bringing you through this to redirect you. To literally help you, assist you, pivot you into going in a different direction. A more meaningful and purposeful direction. And sometimes that's what change is there for. It's to shift your direction. Because some of the stuff that you're doing and have been doing, it's not as important as it used to be. It doesn't move you as much. You can tell it's time for a shift and a change and a pivot when you're not excited about things the way that you used to. Or things that used to work, they're just not working anymore. Things that you used to do easily seem hard. People who you used to like to be around, it just doesn't feel the same. You don't feel as authentic. You don't feel fulfilled in doing all the stuff. So that's often a sign that it's time for a pivot or a shift or a change in your life. So when that season happens, when it comes, pay attention. We're in it right now. We're in a shift right now. And just because 2020 is over and we're in 2021, it doesn't mean that everything's going to immediately and magically come together. That's not how it works. So the first thing that I want you to really recognize, take into heart, and really embrace is that as you also come into a new level of who you are, as I'm coming into a new level of who I am as a woman in this new season, some things are going to change. Some things need to change. And change can be great. It's all about how you think about it. As a man or woman thinketh, so is he or she. So here's the bottom line, y'all. COVID has taught us that life is precious. But it's also showed us that it's not guaranteed. And so even though I was grieving, getting older, if you will, it's not like I'm old. It's not like the vibrancy of my life has gone. I'm just changing. But in order to get that mindset, we've got to give ourselves permission to graduate. We've got to give ourselves permission to not be limited by our past identity. Okay? You've got to realize that it's okay for you not to be exactly as you were before. The question is, what are you going to do with all that you have now? And since life is a gift, that's one of the things that really encouraged me to embrace this season that I'm going through. And I think that's really the first point that I want you to get. You've got to embrace that change is constant. It's going to happen. And you're not meant to be the same. We're meant to grow. We're going through the changes of life. And it's actually a gift because at least we're alive to go through it. You feel me? So point number 1 is graduation requires that you release your old identity so that you can prepare for your new identity or your elevated identity. Number 2, and the next point that I want to share is don't judge the process. If you overjudge the process, you'll miss the whole point. The process is meant to be experienced. It's not meant for you to always figure out every step along the way. See, the thing with people who don't like change, and sometimes, let's be clear, sometimes you don't even know that you don't like change until the change comes. Sometimes you don't even know that you're not as spontaneous as you thought you were until you realize that there's some resistance, like that you're not able to go with the flow. The good news is it's okay if you don't have it all figured out. The process is meant to be experienced in that when you're going up the steps, you can only take one step at a time. Let's say you're going on a road trip, but you've got your phone in your hand, your device. And if you're going through Instagram the whole time on your way on this great trip, you're missing everything around you. You're so caught up in other things that distract you, or you're caught up in the destination that you miss all the beauty of the process that you're in. You don't see the trees, the new neighborhoods. You're not having great conversation with the person you're in the car with because you're caught up in something else, in distractions, versus allowing yourself to just be in the moment and allow yourself to discover what the moment is there to teach you. How many times have you been in a car driving and you're just so focused on your destination, but then you're going to the same place at another time, but this time you're the passenger and you're looking around and you'll be like, oh, I never knew that was there. Oh, I never saw this street. Because you're in the process. You're allowing yourself to enjoy the moment. And there's so many times that we have these opportunities and we have these great destinations, but we'll miss everything that the moment in the process is there to teach us. So be really mindful and thoughtful. Give yourself a break for not knowing what the next step is going to lead to. Just get to the next step, because the next step in that journey is going to be a moment of discovery. You're going to discover something that you didn't know. You're going to see something that you didn't see. You're going to get a different perspective, which ultimately may influence how you move forward. It may influence the direction that you go in. Y'all, I love to decorate. And the best part of decorating is that you can go in with an idea or a concept, but then when you go to the store or you see new materials or new accessories, you discover something that you didn't expect, something you weren't planning for. And the project, the room that you were planning to decorate, it comes out better than you had anticipated, because as you were in the store seeing things that you didn't even know were there, you were like, oh, that will go better with this, and I'm going to mix up this with that. That's all what the process is. So you've got to give yourself some room to not have it fully figured out. You've got to give yourself some permission to just discover and enjoy. The third thing that I've started practicing and doing in this process is I become extremely deliberate about self-care. And yes, self-care can include going to get a massage, which I did yesterday. It can be getting your nails done, which I'm constantly doing. It can be good skin care and hair care and all that stuff. But I'm also talking about something much deeper. I'm talking about the internal and emotional mindset. I'm talking about the mindset of, what do you say to yourself in the midnight hour, or when you look in the mirror, or when no one else is around and you're feeling some kind of way about life? What are the words that you speak to yourself? Are you affirming yourself, or are you affirming the negative thoughts that are there? Like when you look in the mirror, are you focusing more on what you don't like or what you do like? Are you focusing more on what you wish you had, or are you grateful for what you do have? That's why when I say as a man thinketh, so is he. Because the more you think something, the more you actually manifest the thing that you think. The more that you think something, the more that you literally create an atmosphere for the thing that you're thinking to become true. Which means that sometimes the way that we think can be counterproductive to the very thing that we want. So if you're saying to yourself that, oh my God, I'm so fat, I don't like my face, my body, my hair is getting thin, this, that, or the other. Because sometimes it's not you verbalizing it, but you're thinking it and you're rehearsing it and you're festering on it. And it's becoming real to you, right? Because the mind doesn't make the distinction between whether or not it's true. It's just that that's the energy that you're focusing on. So it can be counterproductive. So what I'm saying is, like, if you're saying all these things about yourself that you don't like or enjoy, but at the same time, you're frustrated because you want love in your life. You want to meet somebody who will love you and who will cherish you and appreciate you. If you're the same person that's believing these negative things about yourself, if you're the person that's rehearsing this negativity in these narratives that you're not enough, think about that for a second. Why would somebody else want to be with you? What energy are you possibly putting out into the world? You don't necessarily know what your energy is communicating to other people. Even though you think that you're fooling people, people can see, people can feel, people respond to your vibe, right? And so if internally you are bashing yourself, talking negative to yourself, and repeating these negative narratives, you're being counterproductive for the thing that you're saying you want to attract. You can't even attract goodness and good thoughts and positive thoughts into your own self. So why would somebody else be attracted to that energy? So even if you don't feel it, even if it's like, oh, well, I don't want to be fake and I'm authentic and, I'm just going to keep it real. No, child. Sometimes you have to fake the funk. You got to fake it until you make it. You've got to speak life into yourself. You have to encourage yourself. If you feel like, okay, nobody's calling you for a job, you then need to be the person who's saying, I'm talented, I'm smart, I'm an asset, I deserve great pay for doing a great job, I create powerful projects. These are things that I had to say to myself before I ever got hired for the position that I'm in now. I had to hire myself. I invested in myself financially, became an entrepreneur, but I also began to invest in the words that I spoke to myself because I realized that I was getting so overwhelmed by how I felt that my feelings were actually counterproductive to the thing that I wanted to actually have manifest in my future. So just because you feel it, feelings are not necessarily facts. Feelings can change. We cannot be tossed to and fro like the wind based on how we feel. If we made life decisions just based on how we feel, think about how schizophrenic that might really be. Think about how crazy your life might really be. There are just some things you have to do that you don't feel. That's why we say things like, well, sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. But that also applies in the words that you speak to your mind and your spirit. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. Sometimes you got to say what you got to say. Sometimes you have to reset the narrative in your own mind in order to have change occur within you before change can occur outside of you, before change can happen for you. You have to happen to it. That makes sense? I hope y'all are getting that. Like, I'm not trying to preach or chastise anybody. What I'm doing is I'm sharing honestly and passionately from my heart, because these are the changes that I've had to go through, which is the name of this episode. These are the changes that I had to go through, the steps that I had to take in order to reclaim my life, in order to maintain my sanity, in order to manifest the life that I ultimately say I want. And it's an ongoing process. It's not a one-time fix. And that's the other thing that gets us tripped up, because we get caught up in where we think we should be, how we thought life was going to be, where we should be by this age, where we should be at this point in life. And we get so thrown off by that stuff that you can't even deal in the reality of what is. You can't even experience the process that we were talking about earlier because you're so focused on not enjoying what already is. It is what it is. The question is, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do about it? What are you willing to do? Because a lot of us don't like where life is right now. We don't like our situation, but a lot of us aren't willing to do what it takes. And that's the difference between the person who experiences the same things that you're experiencing, but they make different choices because of their mindset. See, guys, that's why we don't need to be jealous of anybody else. If you see somebody, we talked about earlier, two people, same situation, same set of circumstances, same everything, but two different mindsets. And the person who has the elevated mindset is the person that's going to win. So you don't necessarily need to be jealous of anybody else. You need to understand how they think. And then you need to also pay attention to what they did. And you need to ask yourself, what am I willing to do differently? And when I would have those moments, I realized I spent more time feeling sorry for myself than I did changing my circumstances. I spent more time comparing myself to other people versus putting in the work that they were putting in, spending the time, being in, here's that word again, being in the process. I was so caught up in the destination and the judgment of the placement of my life and the judgment of the destination of where I wanted to be or thought I should be, I missed the whole point, which is there's very specific lessons for me to learn in this process, in this season, and that I was not going to graduate until I did that stuff, until I took the steps one at a time. And here's the good news. The good news is the process never ends. There are just new levels to it. And that's what I've come to embrace, the new level of my womanhood. I'm at a new level in my womanhood. And I could either be upset about it or I could embrace it. And once you embrace it, then you can be proactive. Then you can not only be a resource for yourself, but for others. So the fourth practice that I've had to learn to embrace in this season that I want to share with you is to celebrate the small wins as well as the big. Don't wait for the ultimate everything. My husband has a great saying, and he says, I function better when things are moving. And what that means to me, and that I've really discovered as of late, is that I have more momentum in my life when I'm already moving. If you're just sitting around frustrated, angry, irritated, feeling sorry for yourself, the longer you do that, the harder it's going to be to get up, to get your momentum. Because one thing about getting older is you don't necessarily move the same. Your body is changing. Your brain is changing, right? So you've got to be really intentional and proactive and thoughtful and consistent. I can't tell you how many projects, how many ideas I've had in my career to only look at TV and to see somebody else doing it. Have you ever felt like that? Where you're like, you see somebody on Instagram, Facebook, television, radio, whatever, and they're actually doing the thing that you thought about years ago. And all that does is make you feel even worse. Or you can think about it differently and realize if you had a great idea before, you actually know more now. The difference between you and the person before, or the person who executed, is just that. They executed. They did something. So here's what I want you to know about celebrating the big wins and the small. Baby steps are still steps. I say it all the time and I'm going to keep saying it. Every step is there to teach you something. Celebrate that. And don't worry about if I celebrate it, then that means I'm not going to go to the next level. Because some of us, we operate in so much fear and so much judgment of ourselves that we have a thought about things and how it's going to turn out and make us feel or react before any of the work is done. You really don't know. So a lot of us will be like, well, I don't want to celebrate it because it's only that. I still have so much more to do. But when you celebrate, when you take a moment to take it in, when you take in the joy of your accomplishment, it actually encourages your spirit, man. It encourages you to keep going. That's the whole concept of functioning better when things are moving. When you are excited about moving, then you get even more exciting about moving more. And you've got to trust yourself in the gift in you and the purpose and the drive in you that you won't get lazy because you're not done. But start somewhere. Start where you are and celebrate moments of accomplishment, checking things off your list, and allow yourself to have joy along the way. That joy, that energy, that feel good that's going to help you to continue to crave that and to want to do more, to even create an atmosphere where you can be even more creative. When you create a positive atmosphere that fuels you, then it actually helps you to go. It's like gas. That joy, that encouragement, that celebration of a small win is like fuel for your car. It helps you to keep going. Yes, I'm going through changes. I know you're going through changes. Changes are inevitable. But what we do with it every step along the way is up to us. So I want to welcome you to this new season of the Superpower Her podcast. I've got some great things in store for you. I'm going to bring some powerful women to you and men. We're going to talk about relationships with ourselves, with others, our relationships in business, and more, including our health and our overall well-being. Get excited because you're going to learn and glean from some of the best people that I know. In our next episode, I want you to stay tuned because we're going to be talking to business, media, and marketing mogul Sheila Eldridge. You may have heard her name before, or maybe not, but you've certainly seen the results of her work. She's managed people like In Vogue, Angie Stone. She's created a syndicated radio show called Cafe Mocha that is led by Lonnie Love. In fact, Lonnie Love was doing Cafe Mocha radio show before she was even doing The Real. And most recently, Sheila has created a podcast network that I'm happy to be a part of called Mocha Podcast Network. So Sheila's going to talk to us not only about pivoting, but really how to keep your same purpose, but to change the approach in business and in life. Have a seat at her virtual table, if you will, and really learn about how she's been able to overcome some challenges, push forward, especially during COVID, and to really shift the way that she does business. We're here to help all of us. And I know that you're going to get a lot out of that episode. I'm excited for you to hear it. So stay tuned for that. It's up next. And in the meantime, listen, share this podcast episode with somebody who you know is going through changes and really needs it. Please comment if it helped you. Tell me how it's helped you, because that gives me fuel and it gives me the energy to create even more content that will speak to your needs. Tell me what kind of content you want to hear from me and on this show. On Apple, please write your comments, share it with others. Follow me on social media everywhere at DEYA Direct, and also the podcast at Superpower Her. I love you. God bless you. I am committed to bringing you great content with women of power and women with powerful stories who will testify and give you the tools that you need to take your life to the next level. And I'll see you on the other side. God bless.